In 1969, a National Football Federation sat down and made a business decision.
Do not be alarmed.
Not about tactics, not about training, they decided their team needed a witch doctor, and they paid for one. This wasn't a superstitious player carrying a lucky sock. This was an official, sanctioned, budgeted hire, spiritual warfare treated as seriously as a fitness coach, and the strangest part isn't that it happened once. It's what happened after, a chain of consequences so bizarre that it would quietly shape one country's football fate for the next 37 years. Let's start there, because this story is the key to everything else you're about to hear. Australia needed to win a World Cup qualifier against Rhodesia, and someone in the Federation decided to leave nothing to chance, not just on the pitch, but off it. They hired a witch doctor, who reportedly buried bones near the opposing goalposts, a ritual meant to curse the other side before kickoff. And here's the part that should stop you: Australia won, 3-1, on paper, it worked exactly as intended. But then came the bill. The witch doctor wanted his full fee. The Federation refused to pay it. And according to the story that's followed Australian football ever since, he didn't just walk away angry, he turned the curse back on the team that hired him. Australia lost their very next match, failed to qualify for the World Cup, and then didn't return to the tournament again for almost 4 decades. Think about that timeline. An entire generation of Australian footballers grew up, played, and retired, all while their country sat outside world football's biggest stage, because of a debt that was never settled with the men who buried bones in the ground. By 2006, the story had become such an accepted part of Australian football folklore that a filmmaker actually flew back to Mozambique, tracked down another spiritual practitioner, and paid to have the original curse reversed. Weeks later, Australia qualified for the World Cup for the first time since that unpaid invoice decades earlier. Coincidence? Maybe, but try telling that to anyone who'd spent 37 years watching their country miss out. Now, if this sounds like an isolated, almost comedic anomaly from one country's football history, it isn't. It's a pattern. And the same belief system that buried bones in Mozambique in 1969 was still making global headlines in 2026. Because ahead of a World Cup match against England, a Ghanaian spiritual figure publicly declared he had cursed England's captain. And this wasn't his first target. Back in 2014, the same man had already claimed international attention by taking credit for the injury that slowed down one of football's biggest global stars during that tournament. In other words, this wasn't a one-off stunt for social media clout. It was a repeat performance from someone who'd built an entire public identity around disrupting elite footballers from the shadows, and who has, more than once, timed his claims perfectly against real on-field misfortune. So is any of this actually taken seriously by the people running the sport? You'd assume officials would just laugh it off. They didn't. In one African qualifier between Nigeria and Senegal, an official didn't wait until after the final whistle to act. He ran directly onto the pitch, mid-match, to physically remove a suspected charm hidden inside the goal. And what happened next is the detail that makes this story impossible to dismiss as pure theater. The team that had the object removed scored twice in the closing minutes and won the match. Whether you believe in curses or not, someone in that stadium believed enough to interrupt an active World Cup qualifier over it. And it wasn't confined to the pitch, either. Rival clubs have gone even further, treating dressing rooms like crime scenes. In one documented case, officials from one team searched their opponent's locker room after a match and reported finding lit candles and bottles of liquid arranged, deliberately, in the exact shape of a starting 11 positions, 11 objects, laid out like a spiritual lineup card. At some point, this stopped being folklore and started being an actual governance problem. Which is exactly what happened. The Confederation of African Football was eventually forced to write formal rules treating sorcery and ritual manipulation as fair play violations, the same category of offense as doping. Read that again. A major sports governing body had to legislate against witchcraft, because enough teams believed in its power that leaving it unregulated created a genuine competitive imbalance. But here's the twist: this belief system wasn't confined to one continent, or one style of ritual. It just looked different depending on where you landed. In Argentina, during the country's 2022 World Cup run, thousands of people didn't just watch from home hoping for the best. They organized. A self-formed collective calling themselves La Briganita claimed tens of thousands of coordinated participants, treating the protection of their national team not as scattered superstition but as an actual structured operation, shared rituals, shared timing, a genuine collective effort running in parallel with the matches themselves. Some of what they did was purely protective, but not all of it. Members described a specific ritual involving freezing a paper slip bearing a rival player's name, then burning it right before kickoff, an attempt to disrupt an opponent from thousands of miles away. And in one of the strangest details in this entire story, the group actually issued a public warning to its own members: don't try this against France's star forward. They believed his energy was too dangerous to curse safely, and that attempting it could backfire onto the very team they were trying to protect. So even within a belief system built entirely on the supernatural, there were rules. Limits. A sense that some forces were too risky to provoke. And sometimes, belief didn't stop at rituals performed from a distance, it got physical. In one case, a player was caught digging up buried objects connected to an opposing team, hunting for what was described as bad juju left in the ground. The response wasn't laughter. It was a formal ban, a federation deciding that a buried charm deserved the same serious response as any other rules violation in the sport. So after the bones, the curses, the frozen names, the candles shaped like a starting lineup, what do you actually take away from all of this? Maybe it's this. Football has always sold itself as a game decided by talent, tactics, and 80 years of predictable systems. But scratch beneath the surface of the world's biggest tournament, and you find federations negotiating with witch doctors, officials interrupting live matches to remove buried objects, and thousands of people organizing rituals with the same seriousness as a training camp. Nobody can prove any of it changed a single result. But for 37 years, an entire nation believed it had, and built a small pilgrimage just to undo it. In the end, maybe the World Cup was never just a tournament of players. It's a tournament of beliefs, and some teams have always understood that the game isn't only won on the pitch.